The Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, empowering communities and changing lives. The Urban League has been there to serve when our community is at its lowest. It's never mattered what the crisis was. The systemic oppression remains constant for those most vulnerable. Here at the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, we'll be temporarily adjusting our hours of operation and available services. If you are in need of resources, we recommend that you give us a call at 206-461-3792. To make an appointment, press 0 and speak with the receptionist. Walk-in hours will be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. And hey, we'll gladly work with you via phone as best as we can if you're exhibiting any signs of illness to assist you with information to save your home, find you a place to sleep, or connect you to job opportunities. The Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. That's 206-461-3792.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not driving my sweet AMC Pacer through the car wash, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. You missed a spot.
Hello, you're listening to the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. I'm Kendra.
I'm Russell.
I'm Keith.
All right, today is Monday, February 1st. The news on Rainier Avenue Radio is live every Monday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m., providing you with current, trustworthy, useful news content focused on super service to the local South Seattle audience. We will not tell you what to think, but instead provide the basis for you to discern and decide for yourself. Tonight, we'll talk about tiny houses, the border wall, Myanmar's military takeover, and the MLB proposing delays. Now, on to the local news with Russell.
Seattle police on Sunday morning arrested a wounded man in North Seattle who allegedly had attacked an armed man walking on Stoneway North. According to the Seattle Police Department's online blotter, shortly after 9 a.m. Sunday, officers responded to reports of a shooting outside a gym in the 3600 block of Stoneway North in Fremont. When they arrived, an armed man said he'd been walking with someone, began punching him in the head and in the chest. He drew a concealed gun and shot the man, wounding him. The police found the wounded man about a block to the north. They called medics from the Seattle Fire Department, took the man to the Harborview Medical Center. Police said he was being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. Once he's released, they plan to book him into the King County Jail. Police did not arrest the shooter because he apparently shot the man in self-defense. A spokesman for the police department said a police report from the incident was not yet available. New COVID-19 vaccination sites opened today in South King County. According to King 5 News, the Kent Auburn sites will administer 500 coronavirus vaccines a day, 6 days a week. King County said until vaccine supplies increased, those eligible for an appointment at the two sites must be 75 and older, an individual over the age of 50 who cannot live independently, or a resident who is the caregiver for someone over the age of 50. The Kent site is at Kent Showware Center, located at 625 West James Street. The county said those with appointments can drive and park, walk, or arrive by transit and enter the building. The Auburn Mass Vaccination Site is at Auburn General Services Administration Complex, located at 2701 C Street Southwest, and is a drive-through site. Patty Hayes, Director of Public Health, Seattle and King County, said, "We're taking an equitable approach by starting in a part of our county that's been hardest hit by COVID-19. The two locations are two of the first mass vaccination sites in King County on a consistent schedule. Both are opening Monday through Saturday, 8:30 to 5:30 p.m. Appointments for the sites are filling up quickly. As of Sunday night, Public Health Seattle, King County said appointments at the Kent site were filled until February 20th, and appointments for the Auburn site were booked through February 10th. King County Councilmember Dave Upthegrove said in a statement, we need to do everything we can to remove the barriers that prevent South King County community members from getting a vaccine once they become eligible. Delays in federal distribution have slowed the process, but in establishing these high volume sites, King County stands prepared to move quickly once the vaccines become available. The county expects to expand eligibility once more COVID vaccines become available. To sign up for an appointment, visit Public Health Seattle and King County's website. A 16-year-old girl was arrested in connection with the stabbing death of a teen girl this weekend, Bremerton police said. According to Cairo News, the stabbing victim was taken by friends to St. Michael's Medical Center on January 30th around 1:30 p.m. She was later airlifted to Harborview Medical Center in Seattle, where she later died from her injuries. The 16-year-old female suspect was later contacted by police in the 3300 block of Soley Avenue East in Bremerton. She was arrested. The detectives performed a search warrant at the residence on Soley Avenue. Other witnesses were brought in and questioned. The 16-year-old suspect was booked into the Kitsap Juvenile Detention Center. Bremerton police are continuing to investigate. Members of the Puyallup Indian tribe who are experiencing homelessness will soon have a new resource. In partnership with Puyallup, the Low Income Housing Institute is constructing a tiny village to serve up to 35 members, 18 and older, including individuals, couples, veterans, seniors, students, and people with pets. Low Income Housing Institute operates two other micro villages in Tacoma. The new village will be located at 2027 East Wright in Tacoma. The land is owned by the Puyallup tribe and is currently being used for parking. Low Income Housing Institute aims to open the site by the end of February. There is no end date at this time. Puyallup Tribe News reports Chanel Jansen, manager for the Puyallup Tribe wraparound program, said, "I think these will be the perfect opportunity for transitional housing in our community. The village will consist of 30 tiny houses, a community kitchen, hygiene facilities, case management, and 24-hour staffing. Each tiny house is 8 feet by 12 feet insulated and has a locking door. Low Income Housing Institute said the site will be a harm reduction village, meaning that some clients will be suffering from alcohol and addiction dependency. Low Income Housing Institute also states the village is not clean and sober as it meets people where they are. At least 6 people, and possibly as many as 10, associate with the Ole Housing Now, a group of homeless advocates who occupy the downtown Washington Hotel for several hours on Sunday, have been arrested. According to the Olympian and the Thurston County Jail information, those booked into jail ages range from 26 to 48 on suspicion of first-degree burglary and obstructing a law enforcement officer. The city of Olympia also released information about the occupation of the Red Lion Hotel at 621 Capitol Way Sunday night. According to the city, at about 11 a.m. Sunday, people inside the hotel began calling 911 to report a group of people who was attempting to forcibly take over the hotel. Employees reported that some members of the activist group inside the hotel were armed with hatchets, batons, knives, and a gas mask. Helmets and goggles apparently in preparation for confrontation. Olympia police estimated about 45 members of the group were outside, inside, and around the hotel. About 40 rooms in the hotel were booked with guests who sheltered in the rooms during the occupation. Before the occupation, the activist group had earlier reserved rooms for the unhoused. Olympia Police Lieutenant Paul Lohr said Sunday night, the city's crisis response unit was working with those who needed housing. Olympia Mayor Cheryl Selby said this, making sure our unhoused residents have access to safe and affordable housing has been Olympia's priority for more than a decade. The statement goes on to say Olympia has led on responding to the homelessness, on coordinating shelter, and other basic needs. The tactics used today by the Ole Housing Now are unproductive and won't make the mission more attainable. This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio World. When we come back, national news, and you'll hear that and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio World. This is the national news. In the week from January 6th through January 12th, about 4,600 Republicans changed their party status in Colorado. Per NPR, the number of people changing parties spiked immediately after the Capitol breach. The same phenomenon is playing out nationwide. News outlets documented about 6,000 defections from the party in North Carolina, 10,000 in Pennsylvania, and 5,000 in Arizona. In Colorado, only a small fraction of the defectors chose to join the Democratic Party. Some went to conservative third parties. The vast majority, about 4,200 people, switched from Republican to unaffiliated status, accelerating a trend that has affected both parties in Colorado in recent years. The Colorado GOP lost about 0.5% of its registered voters in the week after the riot. The thousands of newly unaffiliated voters can still support Republican candidates and participate in the party's primaries. City officials in Rochester, New York, released police body cam footage of showing an encounter between officers and a 9-year-old girl who they handcuffed and later pepper sprayed when she did not move fully inside a police vehicle. Per NPR, police reportedly responded to a family disturbance on Friday and said that the girl was suicidal and upset. She refused to get into the car fully when a female officer arrived and implored the girl to comply, or else she would pepper spray her. A few seconds later, the girl is seen screaming as she is hit with pepper spray and then begs the officers to wipe her eyes. The incident renews scrutiny on Rochester and its police department following the death of Daniel Prude, a Black man with a history of mental illness who died of asphyxiation after an encounter with the police in March. Details of Prude's death were not made public until months later, leading to protests in the city. Several members of the Rochester Police Department command and staff were terminated or otherwise left the department. Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene has embraced a long list of conspiracy theories. Per NPR, she's denied that a plane hit the Pentagon on September 11th, supported the idea that the Parkland school shooting was a quote-unquote false flag operation meant to usher in tighter gun laws, and supports QAnon and has said Muslims do not belong in the government. Democrats have rushed to condemn her, suggesting she be censured, stripped of committee assignments, or more. Nancy Pelosi called Greene's comments, quote-unquote, absolutely appalling and criticized House Republican leadership for placing Greene on the House Education Committee. Meanwhile, most Republican lawmakers have stayed silent. A spokesperson for House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said he had plans to, quote-unquote, have a conversation with Greene about her, quote-unquote, deeply disturbing comments. The lack of forceful denunciation doesn't sit well with many Democrats. Even with a Democratic majority in the House, expelling Greene wouldn't be easy. That would require a 2/3 majority vote, meaning around 70 Republicans would have to join the Democrats, something that would make them vulnerable to primary challenges. Disney announced its plans to change the Jungle Cruise ride to address negative depictions of Indigenous people. Per NPR, the 10-minute ride is described as a quote-unquote scenic and comedic boat tour of exotic rivers on Disney's website. Takes guests on a winding 10,000-mile cruise across Asia, Africa, and South America. At the very end is one controversial part. An Indigenous man named Trader Sam holding several shrunken heads. Guides quip about how Sam is the quote-unquote head salesman whose sales have been shrinking lately. Another complaint about the ride is that the first time the boat encounters Indigenous people, guests are told they are entering headhunter territory and that sometimes the natives attack crews. As Rollins College English professor Ann Zimmerman describes, quote, they had the Union Jack flying in the boat, and you have these colonizers getting attacked by a tribe of Indigenous people in the part of the original narrative, unquote. President Biden has halted construction of the U.S.-Mexico border wall, former President Donald Trump's signature project. Per NPR, the new administration has called for a 2-month suspension with border security officials sorting out what to do next. Activists say environmentally sensitive areas that have been bulldozed and wildlife corridors that have been closed off must be restored. Some oppose other kinds of security measures the Biden administration may impose, such as a patrol road or surveillance cameras, that they say would, quote-unquote, militarize the border. Contractors were able to put up 453 miles of the wall over the past 4 years. Nearly 300 more miles of wall have been contracted but remain unfinished. The government reportedly could save about $2.6 billion if construction does not resume. But terminating contracts early also means paying tens of millions in cancellation fees. This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. When we come back with global news, you'll hear about more stuff of the world and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is the global news. Here are some coronavirus news updates from around the globe per The Guardian. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa hailed the arrival of the first doses of the COVID-19 vaccine on Monday as a chance to, quote-unquote, turn the tide on a disease that has devastated the country. Once testing of the batches is completed, the first shots will be given to health workers who have been stretched during the second wave of infections and have been critical of the government for not securing supplies sooner. Ramaphosa said other top officials were at the OR Tambo International Airport to receive the 1 million shots of the AstraZeneca vaccine produced by the Serum Institute of India. In Europe, German Chancellor Angela Merkel has emerged from 5.5 hours of a vaccine summit in Berlin to stress the government is aware of the urgency with which Germany needs to roll out the vaccines. The summit was a reaction to growing criticism over the sluggish start of the rollout program, amid delivery shortfalls for which the European Commission, under the leadership of Ursula von der Leyen, has largely been held responsible. Additionally, Germany's military will send more than 20 doctors and nurses to Portugal, where hospitals are close to being overwhelmed, as the country reports the world's biggest 7-day rolling average of new cases per capita. Portugal is battling a devastating third wave, nearly half of its total coronavirus death toll registered during January. On Saturday, health authorities said that only 7 of 850 ICU beds set up for COVID-19 cases on its mainland remained vacant. Turkish President Recep Erdogan said on Monday that his ruling AK party and its nationalist allies may start work on drafting a new constitution, less than 4 years after overhauling the previous constitution to grant his office sweeping powers. Turks have voted in favor of the constitutional changes in 2017, leading the country to switch from a parliamentary democracy to an executive presidential system, despite strong backlash from opposition parties and critics, Reuters reports. Erdogan's remarks comes weeks after the Nationalist Movement Party leader suggested constitutional changes to ban the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party for separatism, which would essentially silence 6 million votes. At least 24 people have been killed and scores wounded across parts of rebel-held Syria after a weekend of violence that included several car bomb attacks. 11 people died and 30 more were injured in the town of Azaz, where a car bomb detonated on Sunday near a building used by Turkish-backed fighters as an administrative headquarters, Bethan McKernan of The Guardian reports. Also on Sunday, another car bomb went off at a checkpoint near the town of Beza'a, killing 5 fighters from the Free Syrian Army umbrella group and injuring another 4, military sources said. The oil and wheat producing northeast is controlled by Kurdish-led forces, but most of Syria is now once again ruled by Bashar al-Assad, who has clawed back all of the country's major cities from the opposition with the help of Russia and Iran. Moscow braced for more protests seeking the release of opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who faces a court hearing Tuesday after 2 weekends of nationwide rallies and thousands of arrests in the largest outpouring of discontent in Russia in years. Tens of thousands filled the streets across the country on Sunday, chanting slogans against President Vladimir Putin and demanding freedom for Navalny, who was jailed last month and faces years in prison. Over 5,400 protesters were apparently detained by authorities, AP's Daria Litvinova reports. Navalny was arrested January 17th upon returning from Germany, where he spent 5 months recovering from a nerve agent poisoning that he blames on the Kremlin. Myanmar's military staged a coup Monday and detained senior politicians, including Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi, a sharp reversal of the significant, if uneven, progress toward democracy in the Southeast Asian nation has made following 5 decades of military rule. The takeover came the morning the country's new parliamentary session was to begin and follows days of concern that a coup was coming, AP reports. It was a dramatic event for Myanmar, which was emerging from decades of strict military rule and international isolation that began in 1962. It was also a shocking fall from power for Suu Kyi, a Nobel laureate who had lived under house arrest for years when she tried to push her country toward democracy and then became its de facto leader after her National League for Democracy won elections in 2015. President Biden has threatened to reimpose sanctions on Myanmar following the coup and called for a concerted international response to press them to relinquish power, Reuters reports. This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. When we come back with sports news, you'll hear about the NBA rankings and more. Stay tuned.
And welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is sports news. Packers GM Brian Gutekunst says not only will Aaron Rodgers be back in Green Bay in 2021, but in 2022 and beyond as well. Gutekunst said today that the Packers aren't trading Rodgers and Rodgers isn't retiring. Packers GM Brian Gutekunst says not only will Aaron Rodgers be back in Green Bay in 2021, but in 2022 as well. Gutekunst said that today the Packers aren't trading Rodgers and Rodgers isn't retiring. Rodgers said after the Packers lost the NFC Championship game that he doesn't know what the future holds, which led to a great deal of talk around the National Football League that he might want out. One way Gutekunst could put his money where his mouth is would be to give Rodgers a new contract, one that doesn't make it easy for the Packers to move on from him after 2021 season as the current contract does. Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson's future in Houston remains unclear, and if any National Football League team is going to acquire him, trade this offseason, it must prepare to meet a very steep asking price. John McClain of the Houston Chronicle tweeted the asking price for Watson over the weekend. The Rams-Lions trade will have nothing to do with the Watson trade if the Texans do it. They'll want 2 1s, 2 2s, and 2 young defensive starters at the least. Watson, 25, under contract, great QB, team leader, beloved by fans, pillar of the public, start by the Jets. Wowza. In all seriousness, this asking price isn't surprising at all when you consider Watson's talent, age, and the great importance of the position he plays. Watson is coming off his best pro season yet. He set career highs in 2020 with 70.2 completion percentage, 4,823 yards, along with 33 touchdowns with a career low 7 interceptions. For years, Andy Reid's legacy was that of a very good football coach. The Kansas City Chiefs sideline leader and former Philly Eagles head coach was billed as a savvy tactician who was well liked by his players and respected by his peers. His team consistently won. They made the playoffs more often than not and posted a winning rate once they got there. But for 20 seasons, they came up short of the ultimate goal. Andy Reid wasn't mentioned among the greats of his era. Names like Tony Dungy, Mike Tomlin, Bill Cowher, and of course, Bill Belichick. The narrative has evolved in Kansas City culminating last season in Reed securing his first Super Bowl ring after 21 years as a National Football League head coach. A cathartic arrival for Reed alongside his contemporary greats. On Sunday, he's going for 2 straight titles and a chance to etch his name alongside the NFL's historically great coaches. It would continue a remarkable late career legacy rewrite for Reed with plenty of blank pages remaining in his book. The National Football League is inviting 7,500 vaccinated healthcare workers to be among the 22,000 fans in attendance at Super Bowl 55 next week. National Football League Commissioner Roger Goodell said Friday, "I am the son of a nurse and all of you have a very special place in my heart," Goodell said during a surprise video conference with the healthcare workers at Sarasota Memorial Hospital in Florida. "I've seen the work that you do. My mom used to talk about it all day. It's just extraordinary work and we owe you our ongoing gratitude. I want to personally invite each member of your team to be our guest at the Super Bowl," Goodell then told the excited hospital workers, some wiping away tears. The NFL made the decision following discussions. The public health officials, including CDC, the Florida Department of Health, and area hospitals and healthcare systems, according to the press release. Major League Baseball has proposed a 1-month delay in starting spring training due to the COVID-19 pandemic and pushing back opening day to April 28. 2 people familiar with the plan told the Associated Press. Under the plan presented to the Players Union on Friday, and the regular season would be cut from 162 games to 154. Another fun week in the books. The LA Lakers clash with 2 Eastern Conference heavyweights with varied results. Portland is still on Dame time. Jimmy Butler made his return to the court, and Memphis Grizzlies played their first game since January 2018. With most teams near the 20-game mark, there is beginning to be some separation in the Western Conference. As the top 3 teams pull away from the pack, the Eastern Conference is a different story with the seeds 1 through 6 separated by 4 games. Now it's time to go over tonight's show plugs. Buckle up. We all have a lot of upcoming events for Black History Month, so here's what to expect for this week. Conversations in Black by Tina on Tech is on Tuesday, February 2nd from 5 to 6 p.m. covering 10 things Black folks should know about Black history. The spot will feature Laura Rosane, Adderley of Tulane University. On Wednesday, the 3rd, from 6 to 7 p.m., there will be an open forum community discussion with panelists covering violence in Rainier Beach parking lot. Also on Wednesday at 8 p.m. is the Josephine Hall live music performance from the Historica Columbia City Theater. Finally, on Friday the 5th at 7 p.m. is Friday Family Film Night. The first movie is a familiar lie, the story about Camilla Rogers, who hires a PI to prove her husband's affair. When her husband is killed, she seeks to avenge his death by his betrayed by the PI. The next move is a One Vibe Experience, a short film that travels through Kenya and spends time at Young Generation Century, where One Vibe Africa is based. Stay tuned to see what will happen next week. This has been the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. We will be off this Wednesday in favor of the town hall meeting, so we will see you next Monday.